Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you will sound completely absurd, and yet every single word is documented fact. My name is Vrenn Kalthosis, and I'm a xenoarchaeologist with the Galactic Historical Preservation Council. For 300 cycles, I've studied the relics of extinct civilizations across 47 systems. I've catalogued weapons that could shatter moons, artifacts that bent space-time itself, and devices so ancient that even our quantum scanners couldn't determine their true age. But nothing, absolutely nothing in my long career, prepared me for the discovery we made on Station Apex, and certainly not for what happened afterward. The blade was unlike anything we'd ever seen. We found it embedded in a chunk of asteroid debris that had been floating through the current expanse for an estimated 12,000 standard years. The moment our mining crew's sensors detected the energy signature, every alarm on the station started screaming. Not the gentle pings that indicated valuable minerals. No, this was the kind of full-blown panic alert that meant either imminent death or unprecedented discovery. Naturally, I assumed it was death. When they brought the asteroid fragment into the secure research bay, I could feel the power radiating from it even through 6 inches of reinforced plexi steel viewing glass. The blade itself was roughly 1 meter long, curved slightly like certain ceremonial weapons from the 3rd dynastic period, but the metal, if you could even call it metal, seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Dark purple energy pulsed along its edge in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "This is it," whispered my assistant, a nervous Quilvan named Tessa Morgrave, her 4 eyes wide with wonder. "This has to be one of the 7-fold weapons." The 7-fold weapons. Even saying the name out loud felt dangerous. According to legend, they were forged by the architects, that mythical race that supposedly seeded life across the galaxy before vanishing without a trace. 7 weapons, each capable of destroying entire fleets, each hidden or lost to time. Most scholars considered them pure mythology, stories told to frighten children and inspire bad adventure hollows. But here one was, humming with barely contained power in our laboratory. Within hours the station was in absolute chaos, the good kind for once. Every major research institution in the sector wanted access. Military officials from 6 different species demanded we hand it over for security analysis. The Galactic Council itself sent an emergency delegation. Journalists swarmed the station like Thraxian bloodflies, and the marketplace erupted into pandemonium as vendors tried to capitalize on the sudden influx of visitors. Station Commander Brixel Thorn, a gruff courtier with scales like burnished copper, held an emergency briefing in the central hub. 2,000 beings packed into a space designed for 800, hanging from the ceiling supports, perched on railings, desperate for any glimpse of history in the making. After extensive analysis, Thorn announced, his voice booming through the amplifiers, "We can confirm that this weapon predates any known civilization by at least 10,000 years. The energy signature matches theoretical models of architect technology. We believe with 97% certainty that this is the legendary Blade of Sundering, first of the 7-fold weapons, capable of cutting through the very fabric of reality itself." The crowd erupted. Beings were crying. Some fainted. A Melodian monk began chanting prayers. I caught Tessa wiping tears from her primary eyes, overwhelmed by the magnitude of our discovery. "Tomorrow," Thorn continued, raising his clawed hands for silence, "we'll begin formal documentation and study. This discovery will change everything we understand about galactic history, about the origins." "Oh hey, that's where that went." The voice came from the back of the crowd, casual and cheerful, cutting through Thorn's grand pronouncement like a legendary blade through reality itself. Every head turned. Every being in that hub suddenly focused on the source of the interruption. There, pushing a maintenance cart loaded with cleaning supplies, was Marcus Webb. Marcus was the night shift janitor for Section 7, the industrial quarter. Human, maybe 35 cycles old by their reckoning, with perpetually messy brown hair and a maintenance jumpsuit that had definitely seen better days. He had a smudge of grease on his cheek and was eating something from a crinkled bag, completely oblivious to the 2,000 stunned faces now staring at him. Sorry, Marcus said, not sounding particularly sorry as he munched on whatever snack he'd brought. Didn't mean to interrupt the big speech, Commander. But yeah, I dropped that about 3 months back. Been looking everywhere for it. The silence that followed was so profound that I could hear the station's air recyclers humming. Commander Thorne's jaw quite literally hung open. His scaled face had gone from burnished copper to a sort of pale green that I'd never seen on a courtian before. You! The sword thingy, Marcus said, pointing at the viewport where the blade was still visible, pulsing with ancient power. Yeah, I was cleaning out the old storage bay in Section 9, you know. The one nobody uses anymore. And I found it stuck in some rocks. Figured I'd take it back to Lost and Found, but then my shift ended and I forgot about it. My bad. You're bad, Tessa repeated faintly, looking like she might collapse. Look, I know I should have filled out a report. Marcus continued, completely missing the existential crisis he was causing everyone present. But the paperwork for found items is ridiculous, you know? Like 17 different forms just to turn in someone's lost datapad. I figured whoever lost it would just come looking eventually. I found my voice, though it came out as more of a squeak than the authoritative tone I was going for. You found the Blade of Sundering, the first of the legendary sevenfold weapons forged by the architects before recorded history, and you put it in Lost and Found. Well, no, Marcus said, looking sheepish. Like I said, I forgot. It's been a really busy few months. Do you know how hard it is to keep Section 7 clean when the Thraxian ambassador's delegation keeps having those ceremonial shedding feasts? There's skin flakes everywhere. Everywhere. A Melodian scientist near the front made a sound like a dying wind instrument. But wait, said military attaché Vrenn. Kess, a Talian with more medals on his chest than I had fingers. If you simply found this weapon lying in storage, how did it end up embedded in an asteroid fragment in the middle of the Karan expanse? Oh, that, Marcus said, nodding as if this was the most reasonable question in the universe. Yeah, after I found it I was curious, right? So I took it to the testing range, the one way out in the exterior docking sphere, wanted to see if it was sharp. You took a legendary artifact of unimaginable power to a testing range, I heard myself say. Well, it looked sharp, Marcus defended. Anyway, I gave it a little swing at one of the practice targets, you know, just a little one, and whoops, it kinda cut through the target, and the wall behind it. And, apparently the docking clamp assembly, and then a chunk of the station's outer hull just sort of fell off, into space. With the blade still in it, Thorne said slowly, his voice completely flat. Yeah, it was stuck pretty good, Marcus admitted. I tried to pull it out, but it had gone right through like 3 layers of reinforced plating. I figured, you know, maintenance would find it during the next inspection and return it. Then you guys sealed off that whole section for repairs, and I couldn't get back there to retrieve it. Really sorry about the hull damage, by the way. I did file a report about that. You filed a report about damaging the station hull, Vrenn said, his military bearing cracking, but not about finding an ancient weapon of galaxy-altering significance. Priorities, man, Marcus shrugged. Hull breaches are dangerous. Some old sword not so much. Tessa had sat down on the floor. Several other scientists joined her. Let me understand this correctly, Commander Thorne said, looking like he was aging a decade with every word. You found the Blade of Sundering in a storage bay. You took it to a testing range. You accidentally cut a piece of the station off and sent it floating into space. You filed a report about the hull damage, but forgot to mention the legendary artifact. And then you just went back to work. And got pretty far behind on my cleaning schedule because of all the repair crews blocking the corridors, Marcus added. Which is why I've been so busy lately. Really threw off my whole routine. An elderly Quilvan professor, who'd spent her entire life studying architect mythology, collapsed. Medics rushed to her side. I have questions, I managed to say, my scientific training finally overriding my shock. So many questions. First, how did you even recognize this as the blade in question? Marcus looked at the viewport, squinting slightly. Oh, I didn't, not at first, but when you described it just now, the whole purple glow thing, and the reality-cutting whatever, I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely the sword from the storage bay. Recognizable. And the energy signature? Demanded a physicist. I recognized from the Council's research division. The readings are off every single chart we have. How did you handle it without protective equipment? The radiation alone should have liquefied your cellular structure. Huh, Marcus said, genuinely seeming to think about it for the first time. Yeah, it did tingle a bit. Thought it was just static or something. Maybe I should get that checked out. Maybe. Several people screamed at once. Marcus held up his hands defensively. Okay, I hear you. I'll book a medical scan. Geez. Anyway, since you guys found it, do you still need me to file that lost and found report, or are we good? The next few hours were, without exaggeration, the strangest of my extremely long life. Medical teams descended on Marcus Webb like he was made of exploding antimatter. They ran every test known to galactic medicine, plus a few they invented on the spot. The human stood there patiently, still eating his snacks, occasionally asking if they were almost done because his shift was starting soon and the break room in Section 4 really needed attention. The results came back and they made absolutely no sense. His cellular structure is completely normal, reported Chief Medical Officer Lyra Pex, a Delvan with 3 PhDs in xenobiology. Well, normal for a human, but the energy readings, there are trace amounts of architect-level particles in his bloodstream, in his bones, in his neural tissue. He should be dead. He should be so far beyond dead that we'd need to invent new words for it. Instead, he's showing perfect health. Better than perfect, actually. His biological age markers suggest he's aging about 40% slower than baseline human standard. Cool, Marcus said. Does that mean I can skip my annual physical? Absolutely not, Lyra snapped. Meanwhile, in the research lab, my entire team was having collective mental breakdowns as we tried to reconcile everything we knew about architectonology with the fact that a human janitor had just casually handled it like a common tool. The safety protocols for examining architect artifacts require 47 different containment systems, Tessa said, reading from her datapad with a voice that suggested she'd disconnected from reality entirely. We've been preparing for 3 weeks just to run preliminary scans, and this human just picked it up and swung it around a testing range. Maybe humans are naturally resistant to architect energy, suggested Pollux Round, one of our materials scientists. A Mytharian who normally thrived on impossible problems but currently looked utterly defeated. No documented evidence of that, I muttered, pulling up files. Humans are rated Class 3 on the Hardy scale, middle of the distribution. Not particularly resistant to anything. Actually quite fragile in many respects. Then how? Tessa demanded. That was when Marcus walked into the lab, waved cheerfully at the security guards who looked utterly unsure whether to salute him or arrest him, and tapped on the containment glass. Hey Doc Kalthosis, quick question. That sword wouldn't happen to have a matching set, would it? Because I'm pretty sure I saw like 6 other weird glowing things in that same storage bay. Different colors though. One was kind of greenish, another was orangey. Really pretty actually. I dropped my datapad. Tessa fainted again. Someone started laughing hysterically, and Marcus Webb, night shift janitor, the human who'd just rewritten everything we understood about galactic history, just stood there looking confused about why everyone was freaking out. Was it something I said? The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 4 hours after Marcus Webb casually mentioned finding 6 more legendary artifacts in a storage bay like he was talking about misplaced cleaning supplies. 4 hours. For context, the last time the Council convened on emergency protocol, it took 3 standard weeks of diplomatic negotiations, security clearances, and scheduling conflicts. This time representatives from 42 member species materialized via hologram so fast that several of them were still in their sleeping garments. The Quilvan High Chancellor appeared to be wearing a face mask and curlers. Nobody cared. I was there too, standing next to Marcus in the central testimony chamber, feeling very much like I'd somehow fallen into an alternate dimension where the laws of physics and common sense had simply given up. Marcus, for his part, seemed mostly concerned about missing his shift. So let me get this absolutely clear, said High Chancellor Vesa Thrain. Her 4 eyes narrowed dangerously despite the moisturizing mask. You are claiming that all 7 of the sevenfold weapons, the most powerful artifacts in known existence, weapons that civilizations have searched for across millennia, are sitting in a storage bay on Station Apex? Well, not sitting, Marcus corrected helpfully. More like shoved in the back corner behind some old cargo crates, and what I think might be a broken atmospheric regulator from like 50 years ago. That whole bay is a mess. Honestly, nobody's cleaned it properly in decades. A Melodian counselor made that dying wind instrument sound again. I was starting to think it was just how their species processed existential horror. And you found them how long ago? Demanded Military Overseer Kravix, a massive courtian whose scales had gone completely pale. Marcus counted on his fingers. About 3 months? Maybe 3.5? Time gets weird on night shift, you know. All the days kinda blur together. 3 months, Chancellor Vesa repeated slowly, her voice carrying the weight of someone whose entire understanding of reality was crumbling. You found 7 artifacts of unimaginable cosmic significance 3 months ago, and you just left them there. I moved them to a shelf, Marcus said defensively. The floor was dirty. Seemed disrespectful, you know. I heard someone in the gallery start sobbing. Counselors, if I may, I interjected, trying desperately to salvage some scientific credibility from this absolute disaster. We need to organize an immediate retrieval expedition to Section 9. If Marcus is correct, and honestly at this point I have no reason to doubt him, we're talking about recovering artifacts that could reshape our understanding of everything. Already underway, Commander Thorne reported, appearing via hologram with half his command staff visible behind him, all running around like their tails were on fire. We've sealed Section 9, deployed security drones, and assembled a specialized recovery team. They're prepping Level 5 containment units as we speak. You're gonna need bigger boxes, Marcus commented casually. One of them, the really big orange glowy one, is about 3 meters long, nearly tripped over it twice. The sobbing in the gallery got louder. Marcus, I said, turning to face him directly, I need you to think very carefully. Did you touch any of the other weapons? Oh yeah, totally, he nodded. Had to move them around to get to the cleaning supplies that got shoved back there. The green one was super light, like barely weighed anything. The blue one was heavy as heck though, took me like 10 minutes to drag it aside. And the weird silver one that kept making that humming noise, that one was... It made a noise? Approximately 15 counselors shouted simultaneously. Yeah, like a really low humming, kind of soothing actually, Marcus said. Helped me focus while I was mopping. Better than the radio station that only plays Thraxian throat singing. Military Overseer Kravix had his head in his hands. The silver one is the resonance blade according to the legends. It supposedly harmonizes with the fundamental frequency of reality itself. Prolonged exposure to its active state can cause dimensional rifts. Huh, Marcus said thoughtfully. That might explain the weird thing with the mop bucket. Every single eye in the chamber locked onto him. What weird thing with the mop bucket? I asked, though part of me really didn't want to know. Oh, it's probably nothing, Marcus waved it off. But sometimes when I'm cleaning near that bay, my mop bucket kind of flickers. Like it's there and then it's not there and then it's there again, but filled with this weird purple liquid instead of water. I just figured the filtration system was acting up, you know. Station's old. Things get weird. Your mop bucket is experiencing dimensional phase shifting, Tessa said from where she was sitting in the gallery, her voice completely hollow. Your cleaning supplies are briefly existing in alternate realities. Does that count as a maintenance issue? Marcus asked seriously. Because I did fill out a form about the water looking funny, but nobody ever got back to me. The Melodian counselor fainted. 20 minutes later we were watching the live feed from the recovery team as they entered Section 9, Storage Bay 12. 50 of the galaxy's top scientists, military personnel, and counselors crowded around the holographic display, holding their collective breath. The bay was exactly as Marcus had described, a forgotten corner of the station filled with decades of abandoned equipment and dust. The recovery team, wearing enough protective gear to survive a supernova, advanced slowly with scanners held out like shields. Energy readings off the charts, reported team leader Vox Halix, her voice distorted through the heavy helmet. Detecting 7 distinct signatures, all consistent with architect origin technology. I'm seeing, oh ancestors preserve us, I'm seeing all of them. They're really here. The camera panned across the storage bay, and there they were, propped against the wall behind a stack of cargo crates, like forgotten gardening tools. 7 weapons, each glowing with a different color, each radiating enough power to make our instruments scream. The Blade of Sundering dark purple, which we'd already recovered. The Resonance Blade, silver and humming audibly even through the feed. The Searing Edge, burning orange like a captured star. The Verdant Cutter, green as new life. The Abyssal Cleaver, deep blue and somehow darker than the shadows around it. The Prismatic Slicer, shifting through every color imaginable. And finally the Dawn Splitter, golden and radiant, illuminating the entire bay. 7 weapons that had sparked countless wars, inspired entire religions, and driven civilizations to the brink of madness searching for them. Just sitting in a storage bay because a janitor thought they looked neat and put them on a shelf. This is impossible, whispered Counselor Priam Vex, a historian who'd written 12 volumes on architect mythology. The probability of all 7 weapons ending up in one location is astronomically, no, it's mathematically impossible. The odds are literally incalculable. Unless someone put them there intentionally, I said slowly, my scientific mind finally catching up. Marcus, that storage bay, when was it last accessed before you found it? Marcus pulled out his datapad, the standard issue one all station employees had. Let me check the logs. Okay, last official access was, wow, 87 years ago. Some kind of inventory transfer. But there's a note here about irregular access patterns, like someone bypassed the logging system multiple times over the years. Someone was hiding them, Commander Thorne said, understanding dawning on his scaled face. Someone found all 7 weapons and deliberately stored them on a remote station in an abandoned bay where nobody would look. But why? Tessa asked. These weapons are priceless, world-shaking. Why hide them? Because they're dangerous, Marcus said quietly, and for the first time since this entire insane situation began, he sounded completely serious. Look, I'm not a scientist or a historian or whatever, but I grew up on stories, you know, and in every story about powerful weapons, somebody always uses them wrong. Always. Maybe whoever hid them figured that was safer than letting anybody actually find them. The chamber fell silent. The human janitor, the man who'd accidentally sent a legendary blade into space and used dimensional artifacts as furniture, had just articulated what none of us wanted to admit. He's right, I found myself saying. The architects disappeared, vanished without a trace. What if they left these weapons behind as a test? What if the real achievement isn't finding them but having the wisdom not to use them? That's a lovely philosophical position, Military Overseer Kravix rumbled, but we still have to secure them. 7 weapons of ultimate power can't just stay in a storage bay. Why not? Marcus asked, genuinely confused. I mean, they've been fine there for however long. Nobody knew about them. Nobody used them to blow up planets or whatever, and the station's been totally safe. Well, except for that time I accidentally cut a hole in the hull, but that was on me. The human makes a disturbing amount of sense, Chancellor Vess admitted, reluctantly. The moment we officially announce this discovery, every power-hungry faction in the galaxy will come looking. But if we simply don't mention, you want to cover this up? Commander Thorne looked scandalized. This is the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. No, I said, an idea forming. Not a cover-up, a strategic omission. We announced that we found one weapon, the Blade of Sundering, which is true. We study it carefully, learn from it, advance our understanding. But the other 6, those stay classified, hidden, safe. In a storage bay guarded by a janitor who uses them as furniture, Tessa added, a slightly hysterical laugh escaping. That's the most ridiculous security system I've ever heard. And yet it worked for nearly a century, I pointed out. Sometimes the best hiding place is the most obvious one. The debate raged for another 2 hours, but eventually the council reached a decision. One weapon would be studied openly, under massive security and international oversight. The other 6 would be relocated to a secure facility, their existence known only to a handful of high-level personnel, and Marcus Webb would receive a commendation, a substantial raise, and a strongly worded reminder to please file proper reports in the future. As the session ended and holograms began winking out, Marcus turned to me with a sheepish grin. "Hey Doc Kalthosis, one more thing." I braced myself. "Yes, Marcus? That secure facility you're moving the weapons to, do you guys need a janitor? Because I'm pretty good at keeping things clean and, not losing stuff anymore. Learned my lesson on that one." I stared at him, this utterly bizarre human who'd accidentally rewritten history while mopping floors, and I started laughing, really laughing, the kind that comes from pure relief and absolute exhaustion, and the sudden understanding that the universe has an absolutely unhinged sense of humor. "You know what, Marcus? I'll put in a recommendation." 3 weeks later, the Galactic Historical Preservation Council published a landmark paper on the Blade of Sundering, complete with detailed analyses and theoretical frameworks that would keep academics arguing for decades. The discovery made headlines across 42 systems, sparked 3 new religious movements, and inspired approximately 12,000 terrible adventure holos. And in a small, unremarkable section of the station, Marcus Webb continued his night shift rounds, occasionally stopping by a newly secured storage facility that officially didn't exist, where 6 legendary weapons sat on reinforced shelves that he'd personally organized. He still filed complaints about the Thraxian throat-singing radio station. He still ate snacks from crinkled bags during his breaks. And sometimes, late in the artificial night, when the station was quiet and the stars wheeled silently beyond the viewports, he'd stand in that secure bay and look at those impossible artifacts, and he'd smile. Because Marcus Webb, human janitor, had accidentally become the guardian of the most powerful weapons in galactic history. And he took that job exactly as seriously as he took keeping the floors clean, which is to say very seriously indeed. Even if nobody else quite understood his methods, the galaxy would never be the same. But at least Section 7 was finally spotless.